Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar covering SCADA Guard and InduSoft Web Studio. Our very special guest today, Mr. Tom Mayer, is going to show you how to create text-to-speech alarms in SCADA Guard and how to connect that and get the information out of InduSoft Web Studio. Before we get started, my name is Scott Courtier. I'm Senior Technical Sales with InduSoft. And I'm going to do a quick overview of how this interfaces with InduSoft and talk a bit about that. I can hear my computer churning in the background, so if I seem to skip some slides, I'll go back because it's not taking my key presses, but we'll get through this. Anyway, again, Mr. Tom Mayer from SCADA Guard will present to you here in a few minutes. But I wanted to talk briefly about why you'd want to use a product like SCADA Guard and some quick connection concepts and how it relates to SCADA Guard and as we go through this. So why would you use a text-to-speech alarm dialer? Well, the idea that I often use when I do presentations and talking about machines or processes is that those machines or processes are really making money. They're making a profit. And if you think of them as a printing press for money, if that printing press is not running, it's not making money, and the quicker you can get it going again, if it happens to stop, well then you're making more money. So the idea is to help the machine stay running, and if it's not running, get it running again quickly. And also the idea of remote efficiency. If you're not in the same facility where the process or the machine is running, maybe you're in a different facility, or you manage different facilities, or you're even at home or on the weekend, probably at the most inconvenient time, maybe like a kid's soccer game or a holiday weekend. Well, if you get a notification that gives you more information, like exactly what's going on, you can make the decision of, can I bypass this thing? Can it go until Monday? Can I let it go overnight? Or is there a bypass that I can do? And it helps things be more efficient when you're remote. So Tom is going to touch on quite a few different things and how you use the product and how it can help you there. What I wanted to point out is some notes that SCADA Guard alarms are different than InduSoft alarms. And why that's important. Tom's going to show you a little bit about that, and I'm going to touch on the InduSoft alarms before I hand it over to him to show you the SCADA Guard alarm. The way that SCADA Guard is going to connect is it's going to use OPC. And I wanted to remind everybody that in addition to the drivers that you have, for example, a 1500 tag license of InduSoft Web Studio comes with 3 simultaneous drivers. Well, OPC does not count against that driver count, nor does SCADA Guard inherently add to the InduSoft tags. You don't have to add tags just to set the limits. The limits and the tags are actually coming from InduSoft when you get into SCADA Guard. So other than a few maybe handshaking and some other things like that, just a small number, you don't have to add an entirely new set of tags to InduSoft just to create the SCADA Guard alarms. So let's see if I can change pages here. So before I hand it over to Tom, I'm going to talk about some alarms and connection concepts here. And okay, here we go. So what I wanted to talk about is the idea that InduSoft alarm limits are actually properties of tags. They're not extra tags. So for example, the high limit of a tag called temperature, you could note by using this syntax, the temperature tag or the tag name, and then a minus greater than, and then the high limit or the low limit or the high limit. And if I open up the InduSoft Web Studio, let's see here, if I open that up, and again my computer seems to be running some kind of scan in the background, so a little bit of delay here. Let's see if I can get this open. While this is opening up, what I want to show you is the different tag properties that are associated with tags. And if I open up the help system, once this loads up here, and I navigate to the section about tags, there's a list of all of the tag properties. And I apologize here, not quite sure what my computer is doing in the background, but if I get this help system loaded up, the tag properties, there's lots of different tag properties, as you'll see when I open up this list. Things like the timestamp, the name of the tag, the array size, things of that nature. And then you can even get at bits, individual bits within an integer. And then there's things like the alarm limits. So as I call up this list of tag properties, we can see here that there's the name, there's the array size, there's the description, quality of an individual tag. Here's the timestamp, which will show you down to the millisecond the last time that a tag changed. Here's things like the individual bits, and you can just use that same reference. For example, temperature minus greater than B0 would get you to the first bit if that was an integer value. But I'm going to scroll down here a little bit further and show you these. Here's the alarm limits. So you have high, 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 low, 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 rate of change, deviation set point, and plus and minus limits. And notice that those are both all read-writable. So you can read or write those and change those during runtime if you need to. So building off of that idea, that concept, what I want to talk about here, if I go back to the PowerPoint presentation, and there's a really nice worksheet that we have that lets you configure alarm limits. So for example, if you open up the alarm worksheet and configure, for example, the temperature tag, you can set a high limit of, and maybe this is a Fahrenheit temperature, so I have high limits as I'm approaching boiling and low limits as I'm approaching freezing here, and then the messages associated with that. So those limits, again, are not extra tags. They are what's called properties of that tag. Now, what I want to point out, and the whole reason for me doing this is not how SCADA Guard alarms work. These are the InduSoft alarms, and what you're going to see from Tom here in a minute is just how SCADA Guard complements the functionality of InduSoft Web Studio and how you can configure the alarms within SCADA Guard. Before I hand it over, there's another topic that I wanted to talk about is connectivity. And as I mentioned, we have over 240 drivers built into InduSoft Web Studio. We can also use OPC clients. Now, a lot of the worksheets that you see for OPC in InduSoft Web Studio, for example, here under Communications, here's where you would get to the drivers. Then we have OPC DA, UA, .NET, and OPC XML. For example, if I open up this worksheet for OPC DA, and I insert a new worksheet here, this is a client worksheet. This is where we would be the client to somebody else's server. Now, to do SCADA Guard, you don't need to configure this type of worksheet, this client worksheet. And I'll point out that in a second as soon as this loads up here. And again, I apologize because there's something scanning on my computer, and it looks like it's tying up resources that I don't exactly know what it is. This should just take a second to load up. But again, what I'm pointing out is that this is the client worksheet that would allow us to communicate with somebody else's third-party server. And here's a list of the different servers that are available. It happens to be on my laptop. And if you wanted to get to remote servers, you could connect them up through this field here. And again, this is not needed for SCADA Guard. What you would do for SCADA Guard, and Tom's going to show this, is back on the Home tab, you would have here the Tasks icon under the Local Management section. And these different tasks, when they load up, these are your different tasks that InduSoft can launch. And one of them is the Studio SCADA OPC Server. That's an OPC DA server that lets other software, other applications such as SCADA Guard get at the InduSoft tags. So SCADA Guard is going to use its client. Tom is going to configure that to talk to our OPC server and then get at the InduSoft tags within an application. So that's what he's going to do, and I just wanted to point out how all that connects up. So what he's going to do is he's going to use an OPC client to connect to our OPC server to get at the InduSoft tags. So I'm going to hand it over to Tom. I'm going to come back after he's done and cover some more quick information. So.
Okay, so just to pick up where Scott had left off, I had created, this is on my laptop, just a quick little HMI program using InduSoft Web Studio. I created some tags. Some of the tags I have created are actually linked up to an Allen Bradley PLC that I have running here on my network. But the last thing that Scott was talking about is the OPC server itself. So when you were looking at what Scott had on there, his OPC server was not started. As you can see, my OPC server on my application is running, and it starts up automatically. So every time I start the application, the OPC server starts up. So I'm going to start going into just some of the features of SCADA Guard itself. I've got SCADA Guard. I installed the application on my laptop. I'm just running it in demo mode. So anybody can go to the SCADA Guard website and download a copy of SCADA Guard, and you'll get unlimited access to all of its features for 180 minutes. So you can do any testing that you want to kind of take it for a test drive, I guess, and configure it at will for 180 minutes of runtime, and then it shuts down, and then you can actually restart it again, and that 180-minute timer starts over again. So you're not limited to just one shot of 180 minutes for your testing and configuration. So this is the SCADA Guard application. It installs. It's a very simple little executable that downloads. It takes about 20 seconds to download it. The install takes about, I don't know, maybe 2 minutes. And it installs all the features that it needs for the text-to-speech engines. It installs everything. Everything is Windows friendly. SCADA Guard is compatible with pretty much every Windows version out there. I'm running Windows 10 here, so it's even compatible with the newest version of Microsoft operating system. Some of the features just on the main interface, it has a very convenient GUI interface. You can cursor over the icons and you get a little mouse over pop-up that kind of explains what it does. Obviously, this is save all settings. You can export the data, export your configuration, and it exports it into a CSV file. Under the configuration grouping here, here's where you set up contacts. As you can see, I have a number of contacts already set up. To add another contact, you just right-click and add contact, enter the contact's name, and a phone number for the contact, and you're good to go. And you assign that contact a group number. This group number is relative to the alarms. So when we get to the point of setting up an alarm, you assign the alarm a group number as well. And so you can have multiple group numbers that call different contacts. So you can have a specific set of alarms for one group call a specific set of contacts. So you can have the application work for multiple different processes. And then once you assign a group number, you can enable the phone. SCADA Guard is also capable of emailing alarms. Just enter an email address in there and enable email. And then as soon as you add a new contact, SCADA Guard is also capable of doing scheduling. So you can schedule however you want to do schedules. Now, I don't have any schedules currently set up in SCADA Guard, but what the schedules do is you can have different contacts get called at different times of the day. So if you have shift workers, SCADA Guard can automatically associate that, and you can set that up so different people get called at different times of the day if an alarm comes on, depending on who's on call. So that's the contacts portion of it. and then the next icon is configuration of the alarms. Now, I've already got 2 alarms set up in here that are communicating via OPC to the InduSoft Web Studio. Actually, I'm going to erase this one because I'm going to reconfigure that. That's what actually I set up earlier in a webinar. But in the alarms setup itself, so each alarm is configured to communicate via the OPC server, and it goes down to the actual InduSoft tag. This is basically the path. So the overall path to the InduSoft Web Studio. Here's the Web Studio's OPC server. My tag is located under a folder called Application Tags, and that's how I'll show you how to navigate to that when we add a new alarm in here. And then here's where you assign the group number for the individual alarm. And then you can set priorities as well, and a web group that the individual alarms can be displayed on. So SCADA Guard, along with being a text-to-speech dialer, it also inherently is a web server that hosts a very convenient little HTML website that's very smartphone friendly. And you can assign multiple web groups for your different processes as well, and I'll show you that a little bit later on in the presentation. This text entry field down here, this is the actual text-to-speech area. So whatever gets typed into this field is what SCADA Guard speaks when it calls out on the alarm. So if this alarm in InduSoft, if this particular tag in InduSoft comes true, whether it's triggered from a PLC or some other internal means via scripting, SCADA Guard sees it come true, and it triggers it as an alarm, and it calls out to the contacts list, and this is whatever is typed in here is exactly what it speaks. Now, you can also enable and disable individual alarms right in SCADA Guard. So the alarm can still come true. It'll show up on InduSoft, but SCADA Guard won't call out on it. So if you have a nuisance alarm going on, and you don't want to actually remove it out of InduSoft, remove the tag or do any changing in your PLC program if it's coming from your PLC, you can just simply uncheck the enable box and you won't get the phone calls of it. So it's kind of a nice feature that's used for troublesome alarms. There's 2 tabs in the alarm. So first tab is just the binaries tab, which would be where any of your typical discrete type alarms would go. The second tab is Watchdogs. So the Watchdogs tab is for a kind of a changing, what SCADA Guard is looking for is for a changing register. It's for a communication failure type alarm. So SCADA Guard can monitor something that it's communicating with via OPC, and if that communication ever stops for any reason, and it's configurable, it's configurable through the edit alarm configuration box for a specific amount of time, which is adjustable. SCADA Guard can alarm out on that as well. So if for some reason InduSoft, the application, shuts down, or the OPC server gets shut down, and SCADA Guard is still running, after 300 seconds of no communication, it's going to alarm out on, again, whatever is typed into here. So you can have it say, SCADA Guard lost communication with InduSoft, and whoever is the on-call person for alarm group 0 at that particular time, he's going to get that notification that something went wrong in between the SCADA Guard software and the InduSoft software. So it's a nice feature just for reliability and redundancy. And how I have this particular Watchdog alarm set up is I'm actually watching one of the InduSoft system tags. It's the second tag in the InduSoft system tag, so it's the clock second that I'm watching. If that clock second stops changing for 300 seconds, I'm going to issue a watch log. And our next item in SCADA Guard under the configuration is the web-only mode or web-only tags. These are tags specifically for the SCADA Guard web server, which I'll show you in a little while here. But you can show on the SCADA Guard web server, which is designed to be very smartphone. It's just an HTML-based web server, text-based. There isn't any graphics on it, so that's what makes it quite smartphone friendly. And you can show any of your InTouch tags in here, so you can show whether or not a pump is running. You can show any analog level coming in, like a pressure, like a flow, like temperature, anything, and it'll show up on a website that we'll get to in a little while here. But it's a nice feature. Again, it's very smartphone friendly. And you add the OPC tags into the web item the same as you do for the alarms, and that'll be the next portion here. So I'm going to jump right into my little application that I had set up here. So I created a couple icons and a couple graphics that I have linked up to some tags. The first one that we're going to talk about is I just have a Tom test alarm, just a discrete tag linked up to a push button. And that is a tag that's in SCADA Guard that is my current alarm tag. You can see that's my alarm tag. The actual location of that in InduSoft is under my project tags. You can see it's right here. So it's just a simple little tag, discrete tag. So I'm going to trigger that, and that's going to trigger an alarm. Now, I also configured in SCADA Guard, you can do external acknowledgements. So when the operator or whomever's on call gets the phone call from SCADA Guard that an alarm happened, it calls them out, notifies them of an alarm. That operator then gets prompted via the phone to either acknowledge the alarms or hang up. If he acknowledges the alarms, SCADA Guard can be set up again via OPC to acknowledge all the way back to InduSoft. And all SCADA Guard is doing is setting a tag that is configured in InduSoft. You can see there's a couple other features in here that weren't in the alarm setup, where you can see what direction SCADA Guard is setting this tag, whether it's going out or in. So you can do the acknowledgement actually both ways. You can have SCADA Guard acknowledge InduSoft, and you can set up a separate tag to have InduSoft actually acknowledge SCADA Guard. It works both ways depending on how you got it set up. So this acknowledge tag I have set up, and I'm just going to flash this little icon once SCADA Guard acknowledges back to InduSoft, just to show that SCADA Guard is setting a tag in InduSoft. So I'll go to run mode here, run the application. So there the application is running. SCADA Guard is just kind of hanging out in the background, communicating with InduSoft via OPC. So I'm going to toggle my push button in InduSoft. SCADA Guard immediately sees the tag.
Check your email for new alarm notification.
Since this is a webinar, I have it speaking just over the computer speakers.
Check your email for new alarm notification. This is the SCADA Guard dialer. Check your email for new alarm notification. All alarms have been acknowledged.
So I hope you could hear that over the webinar, over my speakerphone coming out of my computer. But then I just acknowledged it via the keyboard, and you can see it immediately went all the way back to InduSoft, and InduSoft has its bit is flashing. So I'm going to unset to that bit. And I'm going to trigger this alarm again to show you the email function of SCADA Guard. So SCADA Guard is also set up to email out that alarm. Maybe you've seen that flash across the screen, but I have it coming also into my email. Now I'm going to disable that audible alarm, so it's not going to speak when I'm doing this web presentation. But so I'm going to trigger the alarm again, and SCADA Guard, see it here. You can see that the alarm came through.
The SCADA Guard dialer. Check your email for new alarm notification. This is the SCADA Guard dialer. Check your email for new alarm notification. This is the SCADA Guard dialer. Check your email for new alarm notification.
There, a new alarm came in, and we can acknowledge the alarm right over the.
This is the SCADA Guard dialer. Check.
Right over email. So I'm just going to hit this link, and it gives me notification that you have acknowledged group 0 successfully, and it'll show up on. Get that out there. And it'll show up here that SCADA Guard acknowledged all the way back to InduSoft. It's a nice feature. You can have it actually incorporated via scripting into the internal acknowledge of InduSoft for acknowledging the system alarms. And via scripting, you can even acknowledge all the way out to your PLCs in the field. So if you have the bits that are being latched via the alarms, you can get notification that the alarm was acknowledged by an operator and allow it to either clear or take other actions. So disable that alarm, reset my acknowledge bit, and now I'm going to actually add a new alarm into SCADA Guard. So I'm going to go back into the Web Studio development, and so here's an analog tag, what I would consider an analog tag. It's an integer. The actual tag is test operator set point. Actually, we'll put that in later. Here's a discrete tag that I have linked up to an Allen Bradley MicroLogix 1400 PLC. We'll add this tag in as a alarm into SCADA Guard to show you how they actually navigate through the OPC servers. So I'm going to go to SCADA Guard, and this can all be done via runtime. You don't have to shut down SCADA Guard and open up a different development application to add tags in the SCADA Guard. So we just open up the alarms configuration, right-click, and choose No OPC Alarm. And then it comes up with a dialog to select our OPC server. At the drop-down, these are the available OPC servers I have installed on my laptop. I'm going to choose Studio SCADA, so that's the InduSoft OPC server. Hit OK. Come through here. It immediately comes up with the different folders for system tags, shared tags, or application tags. So I'm going to go into my application tags, and it's not showing all of my application tags that I have because my data type that came up as default is Boolean. So I'm just going to change that to be empty. Then it'll show actually all of my application tags. So I'm going to choose this MicroLogix 1400 test alarm tag. And here I can assign it to whatever group I want to assign it to. And for the alarm group, or who's going to call out. And here's the group for what web group it would be displayed on the SCADA Guard web interface that we'll talk about in a little bit. So I'll just hit select. And then here's where you can add any kind of speech that you want SCADA Guard to speak when the alarm comes in. So I'm just going to put in there com test MicroLogix 1400 alarm. And that's it. You just hit close, and your new alarm is now ready and active in SCADA Guard. So I'm going to actually trigger that alarm right from the PLC. I'm going to go back online with my InduSoft application. And this little icon will change color to green if everything works correctly. So here I'm online with my MicroLogix, my Allen Bradley MicroLogix PLC, and I'm just going to toggle this bit. So my output is now set as my alarm. My icon turned green, and SCADA Guard, seeing the alarm, says email messages have been sent, and in my active alarms, which is an icon I didn't talk about earlier, but here's just kind of this active things that are going on. So if this is highlighted, you have an active alarm. You can click on it, and it tells you what the alarm is, and it shows up as the text that I just typed in there that it would speak out on a phone call, and the status of it is alarm. And that alarm will have showed up in my email, and it just did. So I can hit this, I can click on my link to acknowledge it, and I've now acknowledged that alarm. And in SCADA Guard, it'll now show up as act. And again, my act bit coming back to InduSoft is now flashing green. That the acknowledge went all the way through to InduSoft. Oops, I just triggered another alarm. So that alarm is still set until I come back into the PLC and toggle the bit. And now there are no active alarms. So the next portion I want to talk about is the web server that SCADA Guard inherently has. And you can add tags into the web-only items. So the tag I'm going to add into the web-only item is the tag associated with this number. I think I have it described as a set point. I'll actually have to check that because I don't remember what tag that is. Operator set point as a test. So what this allows you to do is it allows you to show pretty much any analog or any event on SCADA Guard, and it can display it on a web page. So I'm going to come in here the same way that I added an alarm. You add a event or a web item as a new OPC item, it defaults coming up as a SCADA Guard or the InduSoft Web Studio OPC server. Okay, again, go back into my application tags, and it is that tag. And you can switch your group here. I'm going to put this under group 1 instead of group 0 for the rest of them. And that's it. It's in there. It can all be done right via runtime. You don't have to shut down the alarm dialer at all during any of this installation. So to show you that website is right here. So this is the HTML website that SCADA Guard hosts. Very simple, very text-based, no graphics, but you can open up your individual groups and it shows you what's going on for your individual alarms assigned to each group. It'll show you whether they're true, false, or acknowledged. And then under the status and analog is where any tags assigned in the web-only items, they show up in here. So in the web-only items, I only have 3 tags in there. 2 of them are assigned to group 0 and 1 assigned to group. So if I open them up, my group 0, I have in my group 0, I have the InduSoft Web Studio system tag for the system's second setup in here, and then also a heartbeat coming from my MicroLogix 1400. It's just a changing register. I have rapid firing from 0 to 20,000, and it starts back over at 0, and it just goes nonstop. So, and then this new one that I just added, which is this operator test set point. So I close this down. So in group 1, in group 0 were the first 2 tags, and these are updating. I have SCADA Guard set to update via OPC every 5 seconds. So this is live data coming from the OPC server, and it's only updating every 5 seconds. That's operator adjustable in the configuration. And in web group 1, it's showing 568 because in my InduSoft runtime application, that's what's in there. We can change that to 987, enter it, and it'll change when I update my screen. Now, in SCADA Guard, you can customize these group names instead of them being generic alarm group 0, web group 1, web group 0. These are customizable under the setup and group descriptions. So it gives you 2 tabs, one for alarm groups and one for web groups. So I'll just add a description here. I'll just say custom description. And under web group, I'll put this under, I'll just do a custom description for web group 1 for either. And that's all also configurable right via runtime. So I'll hit refresh on here, and they automatically update. And the information is still there. So you can have multiple different groupings and separate out your different processes for whatever group you want to put them in, and it's all user friendly, very, very, very customizable. I think that's how many we can have, up to 99 different set up for each one, for the alarms and for the web-only group items. The other portion I want to talk about briefly is the actual configuration of SCADA Guard itself. So when you open up the little hammer and pliers icon, it comes into this system parameter configuration. Here's where you can set up the greeting for SCADA Guard. For when SCADA Guard calls out an alarm, you can have it speak whatever you want. Like this is a municipal dialer system. This is your alarm dialer. This is whatever you want to call it. And it's all, you can just enter text in here and have it say whatever you want to say. I just currently have it saying this is your SCADA Guard dialer. Check your email for new alarms because it's emailing the alarms. Again, since it's strictly text to speech, it speaks phonetically. It speaks, however, it sees it typed. So it doesn't do very well with abbreviations. So if you're watching a pressure and you have a high pressure alarm, you're going to want to spell out pressure instead of putting PSI. If you have a UPS, you're going to have to spell out uninterruptible power supply instead of just putting UPS. Otherwise, you can still use abbreviations, but you have to put a space in between each letter of the abbreviation so SCADA Guard can enunciate each letter individually. And that goes for in this greeting or in the alarm speech setup itself. It's going to speak whatever is in here. Now, back under this configuration, you can set up some different voices. Some of them are kind of freaky. They don't work very well. They're just harder to understand. I typically just use the default Mary for telephone. She kind of sounds like the automated weather, emergency weather system when that comes across the radio. That's kind of what it can sound like. You can adjust the speed of the speech and the pitch, so you can help make her sound not too bad. You can adjust the time between calls, how long before SCADA Guard calls out. That's kind of a nice one. So if you have operators that are in front of the HMI all the time, if they have a chance to acknowledge it on the HMI, then SCADA Guard won't have to call out if you have your time delay set out far enough. You can set the maximum number of retries that SCADA Guard is going to call. And that gets back to the contacts. So when SCADA Guard calls out, it calls in a round-robin fashion. And it starts with operator, or it starts with ID, or it starts with who's on the top of the list, and it works its way down. So if the contacts that I have set up in here, if all 5 of them were enabled, it would start with the top one and work its way down in that order, would get to the end of the call list, and it would start over. And how I currently have it set up, it would run through my call list 50 times. In the contacts, to change the call order is quite simple. There's a little mouse over instruction that gives you kind of an idea on how to do it. You just highlight who you want, hit your Alt key and either up or down arrow to change the contact order. And that, again, can be all accomplished during runtime without having to restart SCADA Guard. So it just hits it close and it's done. No shutting down necessary. Back in the system setup, under the network tab, here's where you set up if you're going to have SCADA Guard email or use the SMS text message out via email. This is the feature what we set that up as. I just have it set up to a simple Gmail account that I had set up for free. Just enter your information in, quite simple. The web server portion of it, you can have it go to any port number you want. So you can configure it for, by default it's at 8080, but that's a typically unused port number for any traffic going out of a firewall. And you would just simply, in your firewall, have to make some modifications to do a port forward into the computer that you have SCADA Guard installed on via port 8080, and that will allow the website to be displayed. So on the SCADA Guard web interface, I have a live customer data of a SCADA Guard installation that's been running for a number of years now, and this is what's currently set up in their system for their web interface that SCADA Guard has. You can see this customer currently has a couple alarms that are active, that they have been acknowledged, and we can open it up and we can see all of the available alarms that SCADA Guard can call out on, and which alarms it has called out on, and which ones are currently true, but they have been acknowledged. And mousing over them, it shows the exact time and date that the alarms were acknowledged by the operator. And we can see under their status and analog groupings, I'm showing this happens to be for a water system that's pumping water out in some remote location. And I'm showing real-time flows, real-time pressures, real-time statuses of their pumps, whether they're running or not running, and some statuses of some valves, whether they're opened or closed, and also a heartbeat coming from that remote PLC. So if I hit refresh, you'll see some numbers change because it is updating with live data. And then also on the SCADA Guard web server, you can actually show the alarm logs. So it'll show the last 24 hours of just alarms with all the timestamps in here, and it'll show the overall log of the activity from SCADA Guard for the operator that it called, which operator acknowledged the actual alarm when it came in. It shows it all just on the website for the past 24 hours. On SCADA Guard itself, it has its own internal log file with a history, and you can go back in history and choose any piece of information that you want to look at for who acknowledged alarms, how they got acknowledged, all that fun stuff. Some of the applications that I have seen SCADA Guard and that I see SCADA Guard useful for, the different scenarios to use it would be anytime there's an HMI application installed. If the HMI has OPC capability, SCADA Guard is a perfect complement with it. The nice thing about SCADA Guard is it calls out on individual alarms. So what a lot of, and I'll just use the municipal market as my example, or like a water treatment plant. A water treatment plant typically has a couple hundred alarms. So historically, they would have to put in a electromechanical dialer that would have to either be a very large electromechanical dialer, or they have to group alarms into some kind of a common alarm for a process. And so when an alarm happened and the operator got called, it could be one of 5 or 10 different alarms that is causing the actual alarm. So the operator doesn't know the exact alarm and whether or not it is a absolute emergency that he has to respond to it, or if he can just acknowledge it and fix it. If he's not currently on call or on shift, he can just acknowledge it and come back and take a look at it when he comes on shift. With that kind of system, the operator doesn't have any idea. So the SCADA Guard calls out on the actual alarm. So he'll call out if there's a high pressure alarm. That's what it's going to say. It's going to say high pressure alarm instead of a common alarm at X location or at X process. And then other applications, we're using it out in the oil field quite a bit, and like I said, municipal markets, machining companies that do some automation and running unmanned is a perfect application for the ease of getting the alarms and for the web interface and how smartphone friendly it is, because it's not graphical, very tabular, so people can be on the move and be able to easily look at their system and the processes and see kind of what's going on. I think that's about all I got here, Scott.
Tom, thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Just like this morning's webinar, thank you. I really appreciate it. We really appreciate it. Some great information. I brought this up in this morning's webinar. I'm going to say it again. We read all of our survey comments, and we've typically had some comments on when we have co-hosts that people say sometimes they're a little bit too commercial or too salesy. And this one was not. You actually rolled up your sleeves and configured things and showed people how it works. I appreciate that. I think the attendees will appreciate that too. I hope you didn't answer this during the presentation. If so, I missed it. Similar to this morning, I'm going to ask you about if you're, let's say, need to dial an in-plant phone number that has an extension or maybe an international phone number. Can you add pauses and do different things like that? And how would you do that?
Absolutely. In the contacts themselves, when you're configuring the phone number, you can just add pauses. So if you're dialing 9 to get out of the building, you can put a comma in for pauses. And multiple commas are multiple pauses to allow your phone system some time to catch up with SCADA Guard itself, because SCADA Guard does call out fairly quickly, and it'll rifle off that whatever number you have entered in there immediately. Pauses would be how you would accomplish that.
Great, thanks. So we're opening it up for questions and comments. If you didn't hear us at the beginning of the webinar, we can't hear you, so if you put your comments or questions into the chat panel or the Q&A panel, we'd be happy to try to answer those. Tom, I'm going to take presentation status back from you while we wait for some questions to come in, if there are any. And what I wanted to cover while we're waiting here, and I'm going to leave your line open, so watch how you breathe or what you say, or you know, talk to the dog or the kids. So what I'm going to do here is go back to sharing my desktop, and before I handed it over to Tom, I actually had some information up here on some resources. Now, we're going to be publishing these slides as well as the recording here within the next couple of days on our website. But I wanted to point out that where can you find SCADA Guard on the InduSoft website. So here, if you go to the InduSoft website, you can go to the stores, third-party add-ins or add-ons, and scroll down to the second or third item here. And I apologize because it looks like my computer is still doing some scanning or something in the background. So here you'll find the SCADA Guard OEM dialer page. And what that links you to is a lot of really good information, how to download, where to download the product. You can do it from here directly from the InduSoft website, or you can go to the SCADA Guard website. We've also put together some great documentation as far as some quick instructions, pretty much what Tom just covered on how to get started and connect things up. So I'm going to open up this PDF and show you that there's some instructions on how to do that. And again, a lot of what Tom just showed. So some of these screens should look familiar with what he just did. So that's in there, as well as some special pricing and what you can get. And you can go online to InduSoft's website and via PayPal. I think you can purchase a copy of it and get that and get going right away there. So that's what, let's see, here is the where to get it, the demo version, and the instructions that I just showed. We did have a question come in. Let's see. Tom, this is probably a question for you. Can users acknowledge individual alarms and have them acknowledged through to InduSoft individually? Meaning not as a group.
Yes. So in SCADA Guard, in the external acknowledge page setup, you can have multiple external acknowledges in there. So what you would do for that is you would have to have individual tags set up for the individual acknowledgements coming back to InduSoft. But also each alarm would have to be in an individual alarm group. So
basically you would still acknowledge the group, but you'd have one alarm per group.
One alarm per group is how you'd have to do it.
Okay. All right. I'm trying to think of another way. Hopefully we can answer this question. If you are, let's see, if we have, let me throw a, can you guys, Tom, can you see my screen?
I can see your screen.
Okay, good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put an alarm object on here and go into the advanced section. So there are some fields here related, and I don't use this enough to know all of these fields exactly, but there's an acknowledge trigger here, and that would acknowledge the current line that you've selected, and so you can navigate using these tags here. So I would imagine that there's some way to interlock this so that you could find out what line you're on. You can even use these navigation triggers to page up and page down. So maybe there would be some synchronization that could be done with the PLC to coordinate with SCADA Guard that would let you acknowledge individual lines at a time. So the person who asked that question, I hope that points you in the right direction. Maybe if this is a critical thing for you, rather than doing it as a group, maybe if we can acknowledge an individual line, maybe get a hold of our, contact our customer support, or we can look into it more. If you've really got that question, let us know, and we'd be happy to try to dig into it a little further. Are there any other questions? Hopefully that answered your question, at least pointed us in the right direction anyway. I'm still looking on the chat panel. Let's open up the Q&A panel and see. There's no other questions at this point. Let's see here. While we wait for questions, let me flip back to my PowerPoint presentation here. And again, we have it open to questions. Here's some information on how you can get a hold of InduSoft. If you have any other questions for us, feel free to let us know. But as always, let us know on the survey how we did. If you give us your T-shirt size and your address, we're going to send you a free T-shirt just for joining us. And fill out that survey. Let us know how we did today. Let us know what you'd like to see in the future. And let us know if you'd be interested in co-hosting a webinar with us. Tom, I'd like to thank you again. There's no more questions, so really appreciate all the information you provided today. Good show of how to configure this. I learned a lot. I'm going to definitely represent you guys well when I talk about InduSoft and alarming as well. So, Tom, thanks again.
Thank you, Scott.
And hang on a second here. There's another question. They always come in right at the end. Can it speak string tags? Tom, do you know of a way that you can configure it so that the text could be configured on the fly?
That I would have to look at. I've never tried to do that.
Okay. Is there any chance that the text is stored in a text file?
It's all stored in a CSV file.
Okay. Well, InduSoft can edit a CSV file, so we can read in the file, navigate to a particular spot in a CSV file, and then write it back out. So maybe we'll do some investigation and get back with the person that asked that. So it looks like inherently that's not one of the features within SCADA Guard, but maybe behind the scenes and under the covers, that's something that we can do. So we'll check into that. Not saying it can do it, but it looks like there's a possibility that it can. Tom, would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. I was just going to try to run a quick test and see if it would, how it would respond.
Yeah. So related to that question, somebody else has asked, can you do mass edits via the CSV files? Is there a way to, maybe once you've set this up a little bit, go ahead and edit the CSV files to take everything and do everything, as opposed to the properties windows, the dialog boxes, just do everything in the CSV files? Is that possible?
Yes, there is. You can do a full CSV export, which will export all of your current tags that you have set up as alarm tags and web tags and external acknowledge and contacts. It all exports as one CSV file, and you can modify it, erase tags out of there, add more tags to it, and either re-import it back in as a whole or do a runtime import, which will only import new tags.
Okay. So maybe that's a way that this can work with speaking string tags. You could use InduSoft to write the CSV file and then do a runtime import. And I can think of two different ways that could work. You could actually use the built-in scripting commands to write your read and or write the CSV file, or you could use the InduSoft reporting tools to create that CSV file that you could then do the runtime import. So more would have to be looked at to make sure that functionality would be compatible, but it sounds like there's a good possibility that would take care of both of those questions that came in.
Yes.
All right. Well, I don't see any more questions. So, Tom, I'd like to once again thank you. I'd like to thank all of our attendees. And, Tom, really appreciate you doing this and getting up early and staying around late here for us and for everybody. And to all of our attendees, thank you very much. And look forward to seeing you on the next webinar. And let us know how we did and what you'd like to see in the future. So thanks, everybody, and have a great day. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you. Bye.